And we have to think about all these questions. How do blind people understand which shuttle to take? Is it also adaptable for people in wheelchairs? Or do they have to wait for another shuttle that is there for disabled people? We need booking systems that can be used intuitively. And I'm convinced that digitalization and innovation solutions can make all of our lives easier, and I'm highly interested that we also discuss these topics here on this international forum. We do that in bilateral talks, and we have had some negotiations today where we agreed on partnerships. For example, in Germany, we built up the charging infrastructure, not only by setting the distances between different charging stations, but also by using digital data in order to identify where we need these charging stations according to the mobility behavior. So if we really understand the individual mobility behavior also of tourists that come to our countries, we can come up with a tailor-made solution, and we can be successful when it comes to digitalization. The more data we have, the more partnership on the international level, the better is the connectedness between these different systems. And that's our task, to bring the biggest advantage for the population by using these new technologies and making new mobility offers and making them inclusive for everybody. Thank you, Minister Wissing.
Very interesting projects going on in Germany, and many will be asking you about them, I guess. It is my pleasure to welcome my Secretary General, Dr. Yang Tae Kim, to welcome guests and tell us what the ITF is doing for transport and inclusive societies. Yang Tae.
Monsieur le Ministre ABDELJALIL, and Mr. Wissing and Ms. ALGHABRA, and friends of ITF, thank you for joining us for the opening press conference of ITF Summit 2022. And after a 2-year hiatus due to the pandemic, the world's premier transport policy event and largest meeting of transport ministers on the globe is back again in person. And this is a moment of great joy. But I'm also deeply saddened that we meet while a war rages in less than 1,000 kilometers from Leipzig, and bombs destroy bridges, roads, railways, and ports, and infrastructure which were created to bring people together and enable mutually beneficial trade. This war does the opposite of what we, the transport community, are doing for. But I want to express my profound gratitude to the Kingdom of Morocco and to Minister ABDELJALIL personally. And this is a historic occasion, the first ever ITF summit under the presidency of an African nation. And Morocco has ably steered the ITF through difficult waters over the past year and prepared this summit with enormous savoir-faire and charm. And I also wish to express my profound gratitude to Germany, as always, and to Minister Wissing, who supported us in this preparation of the summit. And Germany has been the summit's valued host country since 2008, and its hospitality and support are exemplary. And here are some summit facts. We don't have many of the statistics yet, but more than over 800 delegates attend this year, and 53 nations are represented. So we will update the statistics more. And as you know, the summit theme this year is a transport for inclusive societies. And around the world, the social fabric of societies has become thinner, and fewer things seem to unite us. More and more appear to divide us. So what can bring us back together? So I posit that transport is one of the most powerful forces that we possess to unite and unify. So good transport, like good education, is a great enabler of human opportunity. Physical mobility is often closely linked with social mobility. And good transport systems leave no one behind. And good transport systems are not built with only healthy males aged 25 to 50. At this summit, the ITF presents 3 projects that help make transport and thus our societies more inclusive. This morning, we launched a website to help disabled motorists plan their trips in collaboration with the FIA. And over 1 billion people live with disabilities. Many travel by car, but face different rules in different countries. So this website helps them to plan their trips. At the ITF stand, you can test our new accessibility tool that compares nearly 100 cities for the ease of access to schools, jobs, shops, parks, and more. And city officials can now see at a glance where to improve and from which cities they can learn. And here and now, I'd like to present to you the new ITF Gender Analysis Toolkit for transport. The women use transport in different ways than men. But transport plans, projects, and policies rarely reflect this fact because we have much more the men policymakers, the high-level policymakers in most of the countries. So when they try to, planners often lack gender-disaggregated data for informed decisions. And our toolkit provides easy-to-use instruments to integrate a gender perspective from the get-go. And I have decided that ITF will apply this toolkit systematically to all our future projects. When it comes to gender mainstreaming in transport, and Canada is a world leader, and we have drawn much inspiration for this project from exchanging with Canadian colleagues. So I'm thrilled that we have with us Mr. Omar ALGHABRA, Canada's Minister of Transport, and he has kindly agreed to share with us how Canada has gendered transport and with what results. And after Minister ALGHABRA, my colleague, Magda Olczak, will take us through the ITF Gender Analysis Toolkit. So, Minister ALGHABRA, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Bonjour à tous. Thank you, Minister ABDELJALIL, Minister WISSING, Secretary General Kim for opening the summit for all of us. I'd like to thank the International Transport Forum for its excellent work organizing this year's event. And thank you for the opportunity to highlight Canada's support for the ITF Gender Analysis Toolkit for transport. The last 2 years have been hard, and women and girls around the world have been disproportionately affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And as we recover, in order to truly build back better, we must create policies that work for everyone. For governments to have a real positive impact, we must develop initiatives through a lens that takes into account gender and diversity. And that's exactly what Gender-Based Analysis Plus does in Canada. GBA Plus is an essential tool that underlies every policy and initiative in Canada. When we use GBA, we are challenging our assumptions, asking questions, and considering the diversity of Canadians and the impacts our programs and policies might have on them. And when we use this perspective in transport projects, planning, and policy, it makes sure everyone is included. Because we know that diversity in our transportation network is critical for our competitiveness, especially in our supply chains. And I'm proud to say that in Canada's transportation sector, we are prioritizing diversity and representation. But there's more work to do. There are still too few women in roles such as pilots, mariners, and truckers. In our commercial trucking sector, where labor shortages are putting pressure on our supply chains, only 3.5% of truck drivers are women. Diverse workers and policymakers can help supply chains be more resilient, healthy, and competitive. This means more equal representation in the jobs that power the transportation sector. And it works the other way around. To attract a gender-diverse workforce to jobs that support the supply chain, we need transportation systems that are designed to include them. Recruitment is part of the solution. We're actively encouraging women to apply for non-traditional jobs and using GBA to develop these initiatives. For example, today is the first International Day for Women in Maritime. Through the International Maritime Organization, Canada championed the creation of this new International Day to honor women in the industry and promote recruitment. Breaking down barriers will make the sector more inclusive and more resilient. Transport Canada is proud to offer this perspective in support of the development of the ITF Toolkit. Our officials contributed to surveys, reviewed draft material, and shared lessons learned. They also hosted a webinar to illustrate the GBA Plus process and how we use it in policy and program development. I'd like to congratulate the ITF on this launch. These tools will support governments and transport stakeholders to design gender-balanced policies that break down barriers. I wish you a productive forum and look forward to working together to promote inclusivity and make our transport sectors better for everyone. And on a personal note, I just want to say that, Canada is certainly proud of all of our work in gender and diversity, gender inclusiveness and diversity, but we need to stand humbly before you, recognizing that we still have a lot of work to do, even in Canada. And today, the fact that we have 4 speakers who are men talking about how much more we need to ensure that policymakers are women makes more emphasis, or emphasizes the point that we're all trying to achieve. So thank you for putting this issue as a priority, and we look forward to continuing our collaboration with you to achieve our goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minister ALGHABRA. Thank you. And so, Yang Tae stole my pointe about introducing the lady to my left, the secret I'd left until the end, and you made the very good point that I was going to make, but that's okay, that we don't have a gender-balanced panel here, and that is certainly something that we need to work on, particularly if we talk about gender. We launched this project today. We've presented it in other fora, but we really launched it today as an online interactive toolkit because transport for inclusive societies for many people out there sounds very abstract. It's not very meaningful. So we've been looking for ways how to actually break that down to a level that people can understand, and the Disabled Motorized website was mentioned. We have a second project that you can see at the ITF stand where we show, you can compare accessibility in 82 countries. For now, for Europe, it will be global, and see how easily you can reach a hospital, can reach a school, can reach a restaurant, a green space, just to raise awareness for this question of accessibility, which is inclusion at the end. So I'm very, very delighted now to have Magda Olczak-Ranticelli, to be complete, my colleague who's worked on this project from the outset with Canada, with other countries who've provided case studies, to very quickly take us through it. We don't have that much time, but you can go to the ITF stand, actually use it, try it out, and see if it works for you. If it doesn't, tell us, because it's a work in project, we need to build on it and we want to improve it. Magda, the floor is yours finally.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for this introduction. And Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's my great honor and pleasure to present to you this ITF Gender Analysis Toolkit for Transport Policy. In fact, in the ITF, we consider that gender analysis is the first step towards achieving gender equality. This gender analysis creates a better understanding of the effectiveness of transport policies and how their impact could be varied by gender. But of course, gender analysis remains a challenge. Our recent survey shows that 1/3 of ITF countries have national gender strategies, or they implement to some extent gender perspective in transport policies. The survey also highlighted that countries need more guidelines and key points in collecting gender data and in designing policies with gender in mind. This is why we have designed this toolkit that offers a simple, easy-to-use method for incorporating gender into transport policies, transport projects, or plans. So just very briefly, the toolkit consists of 3 simple tools. The first one is the gender checklist, the second one, gender indicators, and the third one, the gender questionnaire. So just let me walk you through very briefly. The gender checklist. So here, we will provide the users of the toolkit with a list of questions that can help with initial assessment of how the gender dimension is reflected in policy or in project. At the end, when user answers all the questions that are very simple questions, is this very initial assessment, the toolkit provides a gender quality score as a benchmark. So this benchmark may vary from the very low, no gender equality, to a high equality score. The second tool, these are the gender indicators, the gender indicators list, and in my view, is the feature of our toolkit. Here, this tool helps to select the user the indicators that are most relevant to give policy, to a given policy or a given project, whether you work on urban infrastructure, whether you apply the toolkit to aviation, to the road, or whether you are focusing on the transport users or on the transport workforce. So this tool provides the comprehensive list of gender indicators, including with regard to accessibility, to affordability, safety, security, education, and employment, just to name a few. And finally, the third tool is the gender questionnaire, which is a template to design a survey and data collection processes. And again, this is an assessment tool on existing data and policies on gender and transport. And we have used this questionnaire with our member countries to take the stock of gender initiative existing in ITF countries. So this is a very general overview. We will invite you to ITF stand to use this toolkit. I just wanted to highlight that the toolkit is a dynamic tool, and we would like to improve further the toolkit based on the feedback we will be receiving from our stakeholders as they apply the toolkit. As we believe that all transport stakeholders have a lot to learn from each other in terms of scoring systems, checklists, and case studies. And of course, we developed this toolkit, as Minister ALGHABRA already mentioned, in consultation with our member countries. We were very much inspired by all the work that Canada is doing in this regard. So there was a great experience and input from Canada, but also from other member countries, including the United Kingdom, including Ireland, and our other stakeholders like Asian Development Bank and World Bank and the European Commission. So with this few information, I invite you to the ITF stand to discuss with you and exchange further on this tool. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Magda. And this invitation, don't leave yet. Now comes your part, the questions and the answers. If you have any questions, of a general nature or on specific the project. We have 10 minutes to do that. I invite also, that's why I'm looking at the screen, we have Zoom running in parallel. If there are online questions, put them in the Q&A and we will try to answer them as best as we can. There is a room microphone somewhere. My colleague Aline at the back has that. If you would just state your name and your affiliation, and then we will see who can best answer the question. We'll have to ask ministers to come back on the lectern, so maybe we collect a few questions if that's possible. Who wants to ask the first question? Please raise your arm. Who's the icebreaker? Otherwise, I have to ask Aline, who's got the microphone. Everything clear? I have a question here in the first row. Thank you so much.
I helped Aline. Hi, Magda, and thank you. I'm sorry, I just came in, so my apologies if you've already covered this. In the assessment, are you also looking at socioeconomic parameters that are not transport related, but will affect the way that individuals may move, you know? So one example that we're seeing is the time spent on paid and unpaid household work and so on and other things as well. Just.
Do you want to answer directly or?
Yes. Yes, of course. Yes, so these indicators, we have like 27 indicators, and there are different categories, yes, and exactly we are looking at these different parameters, as you mentioned, so we will be very happy to talk to you about this. Yeah.
I can see a Mexican friend. Please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Juan Tolentino from Expansión Mexico. I wonder, Magda, if have you identified some good and bad practices in terms of the making of public policy in transport? And one example of this is because in Mexico, one policy is to separate men from women in the public transport to avoid the harassment. So. I don't know if you have identified these kind of practices in countries like this. Thank you.
Great. Maybe we take a second question if there's another one. I can see yes from Israel. So.
Hi. Could you example about test cases from which you have learned?
That was a very straightforward and good question. And Magda, I hand over to you again.
Yes, so perhaps I will start first with the question from Mexico about this separation in the transport for men and for women. Of course, we haven't been looking at the specific case study, but this is the next steps, how we will be implementing the toolkit. And of course, this is we would be very happy to discuss with you on the case studies. The toolkit is referring as a part of the indicators on safety and security, and of course we know that across all the countries, question of safety is an important one, and in most of the countries across the world, almost 80% of women have experienced some form of harassment. So definitely we may be looking for the future of how get the best practices and case studies how to tackle effectively this issue. For the second question about the test cases you were referring to, could you please elaborate a little bit on this question? It's with regard to road safety.
Yes, if you can please example about the cases around the world, about planning, about the gender planning.
Right, good practices, and in fact the toolkit in addition to these free tools that I have just presented, we'll provide some examples from our member countries, and we already have, it includes already the example from Canada, and from the World Bank, from the Asian Development Banks. So there are some good case studies on how on the toolkit, existing toolkit as GBA Gender Plus, and other tools to incorporate the gender in the transport planning.
Maybe you can add, you can confirm this. I think the ADB is also planning
Yes.
to use this toolkit. We've worked with the Asian Development Bank, so it's very much forward-looking. You know, kind of, there is not a lot of experience with this. This is a new topic, but as Young Tae said, we are going to implement this for ITF projects. So when someone starts to work on a port project somewhere, you know, you do this checklist, and we just have this change of mindset that Mr. ALGHABRA was referring to. And if ADB does the same, I think that's already something that can be very impactful.
Yes, exactly. I just wanted to highlight that this toolkit is dynamic. So, and the key is our exchange with our member countries, with our stakeholders, gathering the data, gathering the best practices. So the toolkit is just the first steps, but then it's about this policy dialogue, about exchanging and about learning from each other. So this is the next step.
I have a question here online from Faisal Farouk, who asks, and I'll just read it out, since it's interesting. How has new digital technology and data enabled us to fundamentally rethink questions of inclusion? What are the examples of the new possibilities policymakers need to consider that challenges past models and assumptions? So how does technology come into it? Minister ALGHABRA, is that something you want to talk about? You mentioned technology, or Minister Wissing. Can I invite you to?
Obviously technology offers more tools and more information for us to get accurate or more accurate information as we do the analysis. So for a long time, we had perceptions or anecdotal evidence. However, technology now is able to provide aggregates and trends and patterns, and that helps us develop more informed policies, and again, challenge the status quo as we are developing additional or enhancing policies. So, I can think of an example. I'm not sure if technology is the best one for it, but one of the recent policies that we've had to test when it comes to gender-based analysis is the North. Canada has a vast, remote North. And because of COVID-19, first of all, most of the North needs aviation access. They don't have road access, they don't have rail access, and they need to fly in and out of communities. We know that lack of transportation mode for women has significantly disproportionately affected women in the North more than men. And that helped drive us to have more concrete policies on how to support the aviation sector, and including providing subsidies to the North to ensure that women are not disproportionately and negatively impacted by lack of aviation transportation mode to the North.
That excellent example. Thank you very much. Minister Wissing, you talked a lot about digital as well. Would you like to say something? Or? Thank you.
We have big possibilities to be more precise and to have more diverse offers for everyday life. I also mentioned that we try to have charging possibilities in all the regions by using very precise data in order to understand where we need these charging stations. digitalization also helps us to see how we can help regions, more rural regions, where we can use digital solutions in order to make more precise offers. And this is something that we need more and more. In order to give you an example, at this moment, we are in a test phase in the area of car sharing, and we are coming up with a system there so that the cars can be brought remotely to the client. That means that you order your car sharing vehicle to your home, and then this is tele-remoted via the streets, the public streets, even though you might live in a very small village where you could not expect that within the range of 1 or 2 kilometers you would find a car sharing car, you could use this service. So this also gives us possibilities to make individual offers in order to take these people and on this train, in order to make them participate. So these tools can be very, very helpful for such an attractive offer. They are based on data, based on artificial intelligence, and we need these things in order to promote this change. And if you use this example that I have just mentioned, these remotely driven cars also give us the chance to supply women with work, with jobs in these areas. Many women have the problem that if they work as a taxi driver at night, that they have this security problem, a security issue, or that they are afraid. But if they work from an office and remotely control the car from their space to the client's home, they can be integrated in this workforce, and they don't have the problem that they usually know from this field of work. So therefore, we also want to use digitalization stronger in order to give solutions to these questions in our society.
That show the way that inclusion can be advanced and progressed. Thank you very much, the ministers, Secretary General, for your time. This was extremely valuable. I hope the audience agrees. This is the end of the opening press conference. Do stay. The next press conference immediately follows. You may have seen on the program we have the call to action on the war in Ukraine. So the topic, the other big topic next to inclusion will be discussed here in just 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Thank you so much.